So Biden and Trump have managed to come to an agreement for probably the first time this election season. They've agreed to a couple of debates in June and September, which are very much earlier than the typical ones that are held for the presidential candidates. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these details here. From Cryptid Politics, who is in fact a pro DeSantis account, as you can see right there in the title, Biden has proposed debates in June and September with strict guidelines. No Robert Kennedy Jr., no audience, inside TV studio, no commission on debates. Prevents Robert F. Kennedy from qualifying at 15%. Microphones only active when the candidates have their turn to speak, and the moderators must be CBS News, ABC News, CNN, or Telemundo. Now, this has gotten, for one thing, Donald Trump nearly immediately agreed, and then later tried to get an additional one thrown in that was moderated by Fox News instead. That's not gone over well at all, and he also tried to arrange a VP debate. Now, understand that Donald Trump still has no VP candidate for his campaign. So this would be going against a dark horse at this point in time. Eventually, I suspect that the VP candidates will be on the stage debating each other, whoever that is on the Trump side and Kamala Harris on the Biden side. But this still is rather unusual. You see, this cuts the Commission on Debates out entirely. They have been arranging presidential debates for a very long time. It was always 3 debates between the 2 candidates, and it was had a very specific set of qualifications and requirements for each of the debates. Now, if they're going outside of the Commission on Debates, then whatever the requirements are instead set up by the host, in this case, CNN. So we will go into that in just a moment here. As American Values 2024 states, of course, Biden wants to bypass the traditional Commission on Presidential Debates. He knows Trump does too, because as of that moment, it looks like RFK Jr. was polling high enough to be included. And as they say, he would obliterate both of them. The truth is that RFK Jr. is much younger and is a capable lawyer in his own right. He certainly has spent his time in both a courtroom and a debate stage. He will be able to deal with anything that comes his way. But by excluding him, a much younger man, I mean, not a ton younger, but at least a good decade or so, it will give far less of a contrast between a younger RFK Jr. compared to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, both of which are definitely, shall we say, no longer spring chickens. So this has really just been a back and forth overall between these 2 candidates because, Donald Trump has been, well, saying, okay, Joe Biden, you got to get in there. You've got to be debating me. You've got to do it. And the problem is that he was not available for the debates on the Republican primary stage at all. I'm the front runner, so I have no reason to debate anybody because it's clear that I'm going to be the candidate. Well, now that he's going up against Joe Biden, he's trying to get this bias that he believes he's the front runner. He's totally going to take this, and yet he's demanding a debate with Joe Biden. But here's the interesting thing. Joe Biden said yes. The really interesting thing, though, is how quickly Donald Trump responded to the debate challenge and agreed to these terms that are, as Anna Maston says, completely un-American. She believes that they had this agreement done before the Biden camp even posted the video. Now, if you go back and watch that video, I'll see if I can find it for you and link it in the description. If not, I do apologize. But if you watch that video, it's been pointed out multiple times that Joe Biden ended up having, I believe it was 5 or 6 cuts in 13 seconds of video. That means they couldn't get a single take of what he was trying to say without having significant issues with it. It would be like if I was cut a whole bunch of various bits of my text together in different takes to make it so that you would become very understandable for you. It would mean that I was really not on my game that day, and that does happen sometimes. But these are experienced political beasts here. These guys have been in public policy for a long time now. Obviously, Donald Trump not as long as Joe Biden, but that makes it even worse because Donald Trump has got years of public speaking experience. Joe Biden has decades of debate and public speaking experience here. And if either of them has to put out a video that is that highly cut, even if they were on a teleprompter, it means that they're not really on their game for these things. And they don't want the contrast with somebody who has no problems at all speaking on a stage. There was that humor bit that RFK Jr. did, talking about his brainworm giving him jokes and all this kind of stuff. He can speak off the cuff without any issues at all, without repeating himself to the same extent that Donald Trump does, without having to stick so close to the teleprompter like Joe Biden does. This is a really bad look for either of these men if they allow RFK Jr. on the stage. As Whiskey Tango Foxtrot states, if RFK Jr. meets the criteria, which is determined just before the debate, he should be on the stage. And then he talks about the criteria. Well, I have got CNN's article on what the qualifications for the June 27th CNN presidential debate will be. And the funny thing is, well, tell you what, let's go through the requirements first, and then we'll go beyond that. CNN has set several parameters for candidates to qualify for the debate, which will be hosted by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. All participating debaters must meet the requirements outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution to serve as president. Trump, Biden, meet those, no problems. So does RFK, Cornel West, and Jill Stein. The requirements are basically, if I remember correctly, to be 35 years old and a natural-born citizen of the United States. Super simple. That's not like the Constitution put a huge number of requirements on it. There's no degree requirement. There's no IQ requirement, although sometimes we wish. That's on us as the voters to determine if somebody is qualified beyond this baseline requirement that the Constitution provides. Now, the participants must file a formal statement of candidacy to the Federal Election Commission. All 5 have done so. The candidates must also appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to reach the 270 electoral vote threshold to win the presidency and receive at least 15% in 4 separate national polls of registered or likely voters that meet CNN standards for reporting. That would be from CNN, ABC News, CBS News, Fox News, Marquette University Law School, Monmouth University, NBC News, New York Times, Siena College, NPR PBS NewsHour, Marist College, Quinnipiac University, The Wall Street Journal, and The Washington Post. So they're not saying, no, it's got to be all in CNN's own, polls that have to be done. I suspect that this won't be difficult for RFK Jr. to do. He is now some people are like, he's only polled at 10% across the board and every time. And I've seen polls that have put him above that 15% mark, some of them even touching 20%. And as some other people have mentioned, there have been 2 recent polls that have shown RFK Jr. meeting this requirement. So this is certainly a possibility for RFK Jr. to meet these requirements for the debate. The really funny thing about these requirements is that RFK Jr., by the time of this debate, will actually have already qualified, most likely, by number of delegates that he could potentially have. That means that Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who have to wait for their conventions to officially be accepting delegates, or at least be accepting the ability to be on these ballots, technically won't qualify on June 27th, but RFK Jr. just might. Now, RFK Jr. made it extremely clear that if they don't allow him on the stage when he meets the requirements, there is a lawsuit in the offing, and they'd better watch out because I'll betcha he'd win, and that would be an entertaining lawsuit to say the least. But that's just it. These are the candidates. These are the ones that are asking for your vote. The whole avoiding debates thing that Donald Trump pulled off in the primary did no service to the American people. They did nothing for helping him out. And the thing is that it indicates that he was probably scared he'd get his butt kicked on the debate stage. Similarly, Biden really avoided his opponent, which you hardly heard of there even being an opponent in the primaries on the Democrat side, but there was. Still, I think Donald Trump had far more to be concerned about because he had a slew of potential opposition. And even after all the other opposition has dropped out of the race, he actually still is losing 20% of the Republican electorate in the primary season to anybody else that people can put on there. Most recently, Nikki Haley, though Ron DeSantis has continued to garner a significant percentage, usually 1% or so. And none of the above has actually been polling very well throughout the primary season. So this is a real challenge to the idea that we need to know our candidates the best. Now, unusual for this particular presidential campaign season is the fact that we have the experience of both these men in office. And how you feel about Donald Trump and how you feel about Joe Biden, a lot will depend on how you feel about the times of their presidencies, how they responded to COVID, how they responded to the economy, how they dealt with their government organizations, the issues and the spokesman that they used. There's a lot of factors there, but only on the debate stage do you get to see both men directly addressing each other and directly addressing you and asking for your vote in that oppositional way that only a debate stage can provide. Still, there's some other interesting news out there on Biden and Trump and RFK Jr. Let's start with this interesting one. Ashley Biden sent a letter to the judge saying that the diary that was released that has all the nasty facts about Joe Biden in it, it's apparently a real thing. This story, well, indicates inappropriate behavior in a leaked diary entry. And while she says that she'll have to deal with the fact that my personal journal can be viewed online, the reason this really stands out is because Snopes, the left-leaning fact-checking organization that tends to be more left-leaning than fact-checking, actually changed their entry to show true that the contents of Ashley Biden's diary have been verified. This would be, if this was a Republican president, there'd already be an impeachment running through the House, and there'd be people screaming from the rooftops saying, hang him high. But this is 2024. And on top of that, one of the things that Joe Biden actually owns in his administration is the response to Ukraine, Taiwan, and more specifically in this case, Israel. Now, the Biden administration states that they were withholding intelligence from Israel about the whereabouts of Hamas leaders to leverage this information to force Israel to surrender or not to enter Rafah. Now, the invasion into Rafah has been proceeding apace. It's been moving along pretty quickly, actually, and they've already discovered 50 tunnels leading from Rafah into Egypt. Funny that Egypt didn't want Israel to go in. The Biden administration didn't want Israel to go in. A whole lot of people didn't want Israel to go into Rafah. And now we're getting some hints. Now they have discovered some of the bodies of the hostages. There is a strong possibility that there are no remaining living hostages left, as the negotiations that have been going on between Israel, Hamas, partnered with, I think it's Egypt that was kind of sponsor, or Qatar, I think it actually is. And of course, the Biden administration has indicated that they couldn't even put together 33 living hostages to exchange with Israel for hundreds of Hamas prisoners in Israeli jails. So it's not looking good for any remaining hostages. I'm going to point out that I believe there's 6 or more U.S. citizens that were likewise captured by Hamas and have remained prisoners or corpses for this entire time. So this is something that Joe Biden owns full on in all respects. But now if you read this slightly differently, it would indicate that for all this time during this invasion, when Israel was looking for the whereabouts of these Hamas leaders, they were holding back on sharing that information for political reasons. Now, this is something you do with somebody who is not an ally, somebody you don't trust, and maybe that's the case. But think about how much death and destruction could have been averted if the Biden administration had this information and provided it to Israel. That said, the Biden administration has now denied knowing where the Hamas leadership is. So take your pick on which side you believe at this point. In fact, Israel has been so horrific in their assaults on Rafah, and it's been such massive genocide going on that, of course, they dropped leaflets warning the people to move to different parts of of the uh, the Gaza Strip to avoid being killed as they came in. So take your pick on who you believe on this one. At this point in time, it sure looks like Israel's doing everything they can to avoid, shall we say, negative casualty numbers. On top of that, and I could just talk about this for a moment or two while we're here, Israel, well, no, Gaza, their casualty numbers are absolute bunk. And they've just recently admitted to that. In fact, the number I believe was 33 or 34,000, maybe even 35,000. They were claiming it was nearly all civilians. Then somebody ran the Gazan Ministry of Health numbers through some checks, and they realized, oh, there's a whole lot of information here with no information attached. So there was no corpses to go with those death numbers. And Hamas kind of admitted, no, you're correct. There's not any information associated with those. And obviously, that's just, the problems with war and all this kind of stuff. Literally a third less casualties than was originally reported. And of course, how many of those are that are actually, say, Hamas soldiers who have been caught fighting in civilian clothes, firing rifles at IDF soldiers? I'll let you decide on that one. However, I just wanted to share that level of information with you overall. Now, let's talk about RFK Jr. for a moment. Now, we've had some conversations with him. One of the big and interesting things that I bumped into was Nicole Shanahan has actually begun providing donations to other candidates. Now, this is not the same as, like, say, an endorsement. But for instance, she has provided a donation to the conservative House Representative Thomas Massie, who has been a bit of a conservative darling in the House of Representatives for some time. Now, he's made some decisions that I don't really agree with, but overall, if you wanted a conservative member of Congress, Massie is a man of principles and conservative nature. He has made some decisions that I don't agree with, but again, overall, at least you know where he's coming from, and he sticks to his guns. So she has providing donations to people who she says are going to support your constitutional rights. Now, as a VP, this really caught my attention because Shanahan is definitely the wealthy one here. She has a fair amount of cash available to her, though I don't have the numbers handy. That said, it's an interesting statement, and it sounds like she's looking for more candidates similar to potentially provide donations to. Now, some people might say this sounds like buying her way into people's, getting these people on her side by buying their votes, or at least making them feel as though they're indebted to her. Possibly. I'm not so convinced. And this is why, think about this for a moment. Shanahan is relatively well known for being a left-wing funder and partisan in that regard. To have her go all in on providing money to Thomas Massie, who is an abortion ideologue, he does not support abortion in any way, shape, or form, really makes this an interesting race indeed. And we'll have to figure out exactly what it means over time, and I'm watching for more. But what an interesting change. Chris Nelson from X or Twitter, I'm going to start calling it X.com just to keep it simple. He came out and said, who should be included, because she has said that she's going to make donations to Thomas Massie and other members of Congress who are protecting our constitutional freedoms. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Now, there is a whole thread on the common misconceptions about RFK Jr. There is No surprises in it for me. I do think that there are some things that they misrepresent a bit, but I'll try and drop the link to this in the description as well, since I've got this one for sure. But the RFK campaign is not without little bits of controversy that pop up here and there. In this case, there was reports, and I'm going to use that word very carefully, that a reporter spoke with someone who stated that they were approached by people that were bringing a petition to get RFK Jr. on the ballot, and they had the name on the petition was covered. The paper was folded over flat. Now, this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, because the petition should not have the name covered on the petition, and it should be quite clear what you are having people sign. But on top of that, the really interesting part is that it was a third-party organization that RFK Jr. hired to do petition gathering and signature gathering for him. And that organization was recommended by a common Democrat operative. So was there may be some deliberate sabotage going on? Perhaps. The DNC doesn't want RFK Jr. on the ballot any more than Donald Trump does. It just means that they have to deal with a three-way race instead of a two-way race, and there's always the chance that nobody gets the 270 and it ends up in the House of Representatives. Now, this is from an interview between Tucker Carlson and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a football player. And he reports that he was one of the people that was approached early on to potentially see if he was interested in being RFK Jr.'s running mate. Now, this would be as far as that goes, it would be a lot of name recognition, and obviously Aaron Rodgers would be pretty rich in his own right. But he definitely doesn't have the political chops behind him, as he acknowledges. And the question is that Tucker Carlson asks is, did you think about it? And Rodgers said, oh yeah, I thought about it, because I love Bobby and I just wanted to hear what he had to say about it. So kind of an interesting character reference for RFK Jr. And we're watching his candidacy really closely. He does come from the left wing. He's a Democrat from long back, but he might be an old school Democrat, something that's not like what the modern Democrat is. But there's a lot to be said about him, too. There is a video on RFK Jr. I'll try and link it in the up here. I think it's this side over here, and drop a little thumbnail or little drop-in box there if you want to take a look at that, where I talk a lot more about RFK Jr. in general. I also have a video on Donald Trump from back in the primary. I have not done one on Joe Biden just yet, but potentially we might have that one for you soon, if I've got the time. But let's not stop on RFK Jr. Let's talk about Donald Trump. The interesting thing is that it appears that there is a pilgrimage going on to Donald Trump's trial in New York, where politicians and Trump supporters are showing up in the courtroom as moral support. And this caught my attention. Donald Trump goes around, blue suit, red tie, white shirt. That's how he dresses. That's how he dresses all the time. Many of these men were not blue suit, red tie, white shirt guys. And yet look at this crew here that showed up to defend Donald Trump to the press. All in blue suits, red ties, white shirts. Though what happened to Vivek Ramaswamy's collar there? The guy's usually a pretty snappy dresser, and to see him a little bit sloppy like this is unusual. That said, no shade on that. It just seems like it's really odd. And this really feels almost like a coordinated event here. And after all, Donald Trump is under a bit of a gag order. So the question's being forwarded, how much of these guys' talking points, which they all delivered similar talking points on, was coordinated with Donald Trump, and that would be, once again, going against the judge's gag order. Or as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett states, did they call each other in the morning to coordinate the outfits? Now, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has also been in the news lately, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, for getting into a bit of a tiff over each other's appearance in a committee meeting in the House. And this is, once again, the kind of people that we have going into our public offices. When you are serving the people, petty insults like your people's eyelashes or their looks or their hair have no place in your official work. Keep it, I mean, if you want to insult somebody's looks, take it off the floor, take it out of the house, go outside and do your own thing out with a press release or whatever out on the public foyer. But in the house, show some decorum. It's really important because we're just degrading the organization overall, sending people that have these personal axes to grind instead of the people who are there serving you and me and the public and the United States as a whole. So that's my thoughts on the presidential election right now. We've got all kinds of crazy things going on with the debate scheduled, and then of course we've got Biden having more issues with the diary, RFK Jr. having to deal with this third party organization that might have been doing some shady things, Shanahan doing something we're all kind of surprised about, and Donald Trump tied up in the courtroom day after day after day, and then maybe trying to get others to do his attacks for him. It's going to be a long presidential season, and I'll be keeping you as updated as I can as the days go on. If you appreciated today's video about the presidential election, give me that old thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and let me know if there's anything in particular you want me to cover in the comments below. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.